talk about first. So Galaxy is the Facebook page is also now live as well. So we're going to be having simultaneous conversations. If you want to be a part of the conversation, if you're online, if you're on, so obviously you are online, you just need to tune in. But if you want to be able to be a part of that, you can go on to Facebook, you go to the Galaxy page, just literally type in GalaxyAfiwe, and you will find the page there, and you'll be able to see my admin mode right there in front of you. Or if you like, you can call in. There's no problem with that at all. The phone lines are still working. 0207 193 0174 or 073 7792 0703. I would much prefer you ring the 0207 number. That's the one I'm going to repeat. That is 0207 193 0174. That is 0207 193 0174. I also want to rise up even around me right now. So I want to rise up the Galaxy management, as they continue to do great works for the community. No one would be assuming or imagining that they're actually up doing things on behalf of the station, on behalf of the listeners, and these kind of works get done, without thank you, without even notice. So I want to rise those people up. And in fact, actually, from what I've seen on Facebook, the works get done, and there are people who will speak ill of Facebook management. And I want to talk a little bit about that, especially in response to the recent court judgment that we had to deal with over the last few days. That was finishing last Friday. So I want to talk about that. I was there at the court on the Friday and the Thursday. So those days were the days where we were hearing the prosecution putting their case against our brother Abu Ratata, and also by proxy the family. We also was able to hear the defense, and I have my thoughts about that, so I'll share those with you as well. And then also we got to be able to hear the final conversations that they had with the jury. And very telling was the information, or the summing up that came from the judge, and relaying that back to both the parties, being the jury and also the defense and the prosecution. So they're the areas I want to sort of like look at today. And I'd like to start off. I'd like to start off by remembering a tune by Gil Scott-Heron. Now, as you all know the song, he says, the revolution will not be televised. It won't be televised. It will not be televised. And it will not also be covered on the radio, is something I'm adding to that. You see, here's the thing. The reason that Galaxy Radio has been taken off the air isn't like some areas. Sometimes what will happen is that people will speak, be playing music which can be seen as disturbing, and they can use this. You'll get more and more people who will send complaints to Ofcom about that station. They don't want to be driving down the road with little Johnny and little Jane and hearing a lot of slack lyrics coming through their radio. So there is more chance that there are going to be complaints coming through from people who are from the general public complaining about that radio station. Galaxy never had that. So what you had was many people were just allowing Galaxy to carry on doing what we were doing. because there wasn't like an onslaught, an affront on people's sensibilities. In fact, we had the enviable position of having ministers of parliament here in Galaxy Studios. We had the police commissioner here on more than one occasion. You know, this gave us a level of kudos, a level of gravitas, a level of heft that came along with that name Galaxy Radio. So here we are now without the FM playback. Thanks very much, Ruta. I know I've got your message. We're now having without that FM playback, and a lot of people are considering the beginning of the end for Galaxy. But you know, as I said at the top of the show, you know, Gil Scott Heron said it won't be televised. You won't be able to know about this on your usual news and radio stations. It's not happening. What is going on, in fact, is that the powers that be, Ofcom, not only are they dealing with, you know, record complaints from people watching Love Island, and they're not only dealing with people who are complaining about a bad lyric that was on Capital Radio. They're not only complaining about those things. Ofcom are also looking at pirate radio stations, and the excuse they give is that they need to be able to give out licenses to people for people to be on the FM dial. Now, license is a term they use, tax is a term I use. What they don't want is for people to be profiting from being on air and without them getting their piece, getting their tax, getting their food, getting their little bit of change. And because of the fact that here at Galaxy, there is no commercial arm of it, there is no sales and marketing department, there is no adverts that are running, because it has always been a self-funded community organization, there hasn't been that much of a reason or incentive for them to go for Galaxy Radio. Not only have we been very careful about not interrupting other people's broadcasts, but also being careful about what is being broadcast. And at the same time, we've also been mindful of not using it as a platform to be able to make funds. Usually what you'll see is other people, other stations, they'll be on something like this and they'll say, oh, and by the way, you can catch me live here. Tickets are only £10. Look to do these blah, blah, so they can actually make some money out of it. Here, it's not like that. It's about us being able to give something back to the community. And these are the reasons why Galaxy's been able to continue for so long without issue, without upset, and without contempt, and without people coming in and kicking our door off and removing our stuff every 2 months. In fact, it's been 30 years that Galaxy's been running. So there I was on Facebook. I'm going to try and find this post so I can read it back to you directly. Maybe a bit difficult to find, so bear with me because it's been a few days since I saw it. My machine is very slow as well for some reason today. Let's see, bear with me. Bear with. Okay, I'll leave that to circle. It just seems to be buffering. What I saw on Facebook was people, I wouldn't say complaining, but definitely, upset with the way in which Dr. Abu presented himself at the court, which I thought was very strange. You know, what the post was saying was that on the radio, there's all this big talk about how, we're never going to kowtow to Ofcom and so on and so forth. But then at the court, it was capitulation. It was like, we need to just stop and listen to what the courts are saying. And so what the post was saying was that actually what should have happened was that he should have just gone along, sort of like shouted or burnt down Babylon in the courthouse, and carry on with all sorts of foolishness, and then have himself taken off to jail. That's what people were kind of like expecting. And those kind of people have no idea about how war works, how warfare works. They're with that sort of mindset, you would be cannon fodder. With that sort of mindset, you would be the first person to go. You would be the one in Star Trek where you're the one random black member who's going down onto the surface, and before they even land, his brother's already going to be that kind of mindset. You have to be willing to be a lot more strategic about how you deal with these things. But instead, what I saw were people complaining, people sort of niggling and having thoughts that were as though they wanted to see fireworks. Go to a little bit about what happened while we was there. So first of all, we had the prosecution. Now the case was very cut and dry, very black and white, very in and out. It was very monochrome. It was basically, the law says you cannot have equipment that is able to broadcast, and you are not allowed to broadcast with said equipment. Now, if the items are in your home or in a place that is registered to you, you are the person that is responsible. Okay, so that's what they went with. Not only did Brother Abu have this equipment that can broadcast, but it was in a place that belonged to Brother Abu, so they said, okay, there you go, you throw the book at him, he is guilty. There was no kind of no need to convince the jury about the facts. Literally, he went through what actually is the law, and then said, we went out, we had a look, we found the transmitter, we followed it round to where Dr. Abu was holding this stuff. We pulled the plug and the transmitter stopped. That gave us confirmation that we were indeed at the right place. So hence, he's back to rights. The defense came back with, well, when you check it, we've not been using this to profit for ourselves. It has been something that has been self-funded by members of the public, by listeners, and by the various DJs and presenters. Then they went on to say that actually as well, we have been able to provide lots of help, like a soup kitchen, a Meals on Wheels for some of our older people in the community. We've been able to be a very good one-stop information place for people who are unable to either get out of their homes and be able to get that local information that is required for people in our community. So there was no defense about the legality or the illegality of what was happening. There was no defense about it. And actually, you're bang to rights. There is no way you can kind of, "Ooh, I didn't know," or "It's not my stuff," or no, you had no where to stand. The only thing you could really do at that point was to mitigate the potential losses. So you try to diminish the potential losses. Now, maximum is 2 years in prison and an unlimited fine. So you can be fined whatever you like. Once the jury was sent out to be able to deliberate, the judge wanted to be able to talk with both the prosecution and the defense. And what the judge said was, "Listen, defense, I don't want you to talk anything about how good or how nice Dr. Abu is. I don't want you to talk about how useful this station has been for our community. That is irrelevant right now. What is relevant is, did he have the equipment? Was the equipment being used to broadcast illegally? And that's it. That's all you can really, that's all this case is about. Whether he was good or bad is irrelevant. So the jurors come back into the court. And the first up is prosecution. Prosecutor, look, let's just keep this very straight. And actually, before that, the judge was able to then give his comments and sum up the whole case. So he said to the jury, look, when we look back at the last few days when we've been here, so it's like 5 days, from Monday to Friday that they were there, we've been able to hear from the prosecution about how there was this equipment, and this equipment was broadcasting at this level of hertz and of this bandwidth, and we can find that it actually all falls back onto this address that Dr. Abu owns. So that is where we are, and unless you can have something in your head that says actually it wasn't Dr. Abu's, or he wasn't doing broadcasting even though we proved you his, you must find him guilty. Defense came up with, it's up to you now. There's nothing I can say because of what the judge had told her before. So she's just left the jury to decide for themselves. She already knew what was happening. There was many people who were also upset because prior to that, there were times when the prosecution never had all their paperwork together, all their facts together, or their proof. Like, obviously the burden of proof is with them, and they didn't have that all. And it was always argued at that point, we should have asked for an acquittal rather than giving them more time, because clearly they haven't done their job, or what they're saying isn't true. So we don't want to give them an opportunity to be able to bring in more information, more evidence against us. They've had chances to do that and they've failed. So let's just have this case quashed, as it were. But defense didn't do that. Defense allowed for the prosecution to get the rest of their information. And so we found ourselves there on the Friday with the judge telling the jury, look, you've had this opportunity to hear from the defense. The defense has basically said it's up to you, and you've been able to hear from the prosecution, who's been able to tell you every reason as to why this man is guilty. Now go off and make your decision. So they leave. The gallery, us who were there just having a listen in the background, we leave. I'm thinking to myself, well, I might as well go and get a tuna sandwich or something, because it's gonna be a while I deliberate. I literally was able to say, okay, XYZ, I'll see you later, or whatever. And then there was a call. Yeah, but they've called us back in. So it was in a very short period of time. I think it was about 10 minutes of deliberation. It was literally as though they had gone in there and said, okay, does anyone think this person is not guilty? And everyone said, no, of course not. Okay, great. So let's put down guilty so we can leave and go home. It was so fast. It was so fast that they came back and said, yep, on all 3 counts, we find this man guilty of illegally broadcasting this thing. So the judge lets them go, and we are left wondering what is going to happen. Is the judge going to take into consideration, will the plan that the defense had to try and mitigate against those upcoming losses, was that plan a workable plan? So the judge said that his main concern was that he didn't want for Dr. Abu to continue, because clearly he's very vested in this station, and he didn't want him to continue to broadcast on an FM dial because it's just against law, regardless of whether it's good or bad, right or wrong. So his idea was, we need to find a way to be able to stop him from doing that. And they came up with an idea of 3 years conditional discharge, and also a £200 fine. Now, what was interesting was the prosecution had said, well, the last pirate radio station that was able to find on Westlaw is a bunch of books that solicitors use. It's like legal encyclopedias. I know this because I used to sell Westlaw books to solicitors as one of my old gigs that I did when I was younger. And he said, yeah, the last pirate station on Westlaw, they were fined £2,000. So that gives Your Honor a nice kind of ballpark figure to go for, given the fact that this is not a commercial station. We'd have to look at contribution to the costs of Ofcom, and Ofcom's costs are, I think it was like £8,000. So it was like as though the prosecution was pushing for like 10 grand to be levied against Galaxy Radio. The judge came back with a £200 fine because he recognized that the defense, he recognized what the defense was trying to do. They're trying to show how well this station, this community, how there would have been so many people who would have found themselves homeless, or would have found themselves victim of crime, or would have found themselves, hungry. He was able to see the good that has come from that. And so he reflected that in a fine that was so small that those in the gallery had a quick whip round and was able to pay it off before Dr. Abu left the court. It was like that. And also the 3 years conditional discharge means that he's not being locked away like how other pirate radio stations or pirate DJs have been dealt with in the past. But for me, it's like as though the defense was successful because of the fact that we're still here, and we're still now in a position where we can start thinking about what's next. And that's what I want to touch on. You see, now, here's the thing. I was looking through the Guardian newspaper and came across an article which talked about the sales of books, right? Now, they were saying that books have been declining in sales steadily for years. They've been declining in sales. There used to be a time where people would imagine, everyone's got a good book in their head, and you could actually write your memoirs and people would buy that, and then you could earn money off of it. Less and less people are able to do that. authors are using books more like extreme business cards. So you can say, hello, my name is Dr. A, B, or C. I've written a book on X, Y, Z, and I can now be an expert in an area, and I'll do some speaking engagements and so on and so forth, or I can write a column for a newspaper. That's what books are really being used for now. They're not. No one's bothered about people spending money on books. If you look at something like Harry Potter, the amount of money that would have been made on the books versus the amount of money that would have been made on the films is completely skewed. So this old medium of books is now becoming outdated and defunct. It's dying as we watch it, and it's dying quickly. Also, when you look at the terrestrial TV, so your BBC One, BBC Two, ITV, Channel 4, Channel 5. It's interesting because I remember when there was 3 stations. I know some of you remember when there was just 2. I go back as far as 3. So LWT, BBC One, and BBC Two. I remember those things going off during the middle of 11:45, 12 o'clock sort of time. And what we had back then were massive numbers of people watching certain shows. So if EastEnders came on, you would have millions of people who are all stopping what they're doing at the same time. There were times when, if something huge was going to happen, let's say, for example, there was a big Brookside episode, the amount of traffic on the road would decrease because everybody's already home in order to watch that program. That was the level of power that these media organizations had. And what has happened is that TV numbers have dwindled. They have dropped off so much, to the point where it's like they're struggling for viewership. That's why they're only ever doing the same old nonsense that they can find that will be able to bring in a few viewers. The viewership has, instead of trying to interest younger people, they're more interested in being able to diversify their portfolio, make sure that people can watch them both on their TV and also on their phone, on their computer or on their Xbox, because of the fact that they know that people's attitudes and appetites for media are changing. The way people take information is changing. All right? If you, according to according to them, they were saying that we are almost in the United Kingdom. We are almost at 100% ownership of smartphones for people between the ages of 16 to 24. So we're like at 96% of 16 to 24-year-olds have smartphones. So they're expecting the decline of TV viewership to level off in 2 years' time, by 2020. I think by then, we'll be at 100% ownership, and so the figures of what these TV stations have. What they're not thinking about is there are old fogies like myself who also have smartphones, and there are more and more of us who aren't dying, we're still using smartphones. They're not taking into consideration that media like YouTube, like Facebook, like Snapchat, and so on and so forth, these are areas where people are now getting more of their content. I find myself getting taking in more content from my phone, from this 5-inch phone, than my 40-inch TV. There's no point to it. It's big, it's cumbersome, and it only puts on shows when it wants to put on shows. I can put in the sky. Plus, so that's another thing. People are finding that they want to be able to take content at a time that's suitable to them. So what does that all have to do with Galaxy? Why am I speaking about the fact that media is changing? Why did I start off by talking about the fact that the revolution will not be televised? Well, Galaxy now is at a point where we're going to have to change. We're going to have to evolve. We're going to have to no longer sit back and accept things the way they have been for the past 30 years. Can't do that. There has been some good moves. So for example, now people are listening on TuneIn, for example. Whereas 5 years ago, that wasn't available in the FM dial. TuneIn allows your voice to be able to be heard around the globe. Whereas when you're just focusing on an FM dial in Peckham, you know, you have your transmitter in Peckham. I know if I get as far as Broccoli, it starts going a bit fuzzy. I know that if I go to parts of Brixton, it starts to knock out. So it's a very small area that you're able to really impact. If you want to look at the world we're living in a much more global society. We're finding that there are more people over in Gambia who were born in the UK, who are interested in what's happening in the UK, but they live in the Gambia, or they live in Jamaica, or they live in America, or they live in Canada. You're finding that there's people who are moving around. The diaspora is moving about. Also at the same time, you're finding that the same things that are happening here. So you have this mad Donald Trump person over in the USA with his mad blonde hair. You have Gert Wilders in Amsterdam, in the Netherlands, and he has the same mad blonde hair, and he's talking his racist stuff as well. Then you have Marine Le Pen. Now, she doesn't have mad hair, it's blonde still, but she's on that same thing. And over here, we have Boris Johnson, who today was talking about how women with the niqab, the Muslim women with the niqab, you know, they look like letterboxes, he said. And I think he said train robbers. What he has seen is the fact that there is a global reach from the masses for the feeling or wanting to get back to, you know, that position of white supremacy. They want that so bad. They will cling to anyone who's willing to be able to speak that, you know, talk that talk. There's no point being someone who is, you know, Mr. Nice Guy, Mr. Nice Lady. There's no point, because what they are hankering for is power, is for influence, is for dominance. And while they're hankering for that, they will latch on to anybody who is willing to speak to their concerns and to their fears. So this is why it's important that Galaxy Radio has to start changing, because the things that we speak about here, this de-brainwashing, is no good just working on de-brainwashing Peckham and Camberwell Green and a little bit of Brixton and a little bit of Broccoli and a little bit of Lewisham. No point. It's not going to work. The problem is much, much, much bigger than that. So we're going to have to start thinking on a much bigger scale. We're going to have to take this thing global. Caring, you know, trying to hold on to an FM signal where you have a government agency who can decide who can be on there or who cannot be on there. Right now, there are no commercial licenses available. There are only community licenses available. And as a community licensee, you're going to have to be willing to work towards what the government says they want to hear you talk about. So there's no way that you can be talking about anything that is anti-LGBT. You cannot sit there and say, well, you know, LGBTQ, I can't remember the other letters, is unnatural or negative or, you know, not life affirming. No. You can't do that. What you have to do, if you are going to go along with the terms and conditions of Ofcom, is to say it's fine, it's good, there's nothing wrong with it, and you know, if you really have a problem with it, then you just don't mention it. You do the benign neglect thing. So you just be like, there's no such thing as LGBTQ. There's no such thing. It just doesn't exist. Wouldn't work if you're running a de-brainwashing station to just pretend like it's not happening. There are plenty of people right now who are pretending that things that are happening around them are not happening. And it doesn't work because it just means you're unprepared for when it sucks you in the face. Also, if you were to go along with the terms and conditions of Ofcom, you cannot have such a non-diverse set of people running it. You can't have an all black management with all black presenters. There's none of the presenters are having a gay relationship. None of the presenters are doing. You couldn't have none of that. That's going to be a problem for them. I can guarantee you that there will be someone who will say, hello, you know, my name is Pete Smith, and I'm interested in de-brainwashing as well, and I'd like to have a slot. And because you won't give me a slot, I'll complain to Ofcom. Now, Ofcom has to investigate. Why won't you give Pete Smith? He wants to talk about, I don't know, Russians. Why not? Why not including Pete Smith? This is what happens when you start trying to live within the terms and conditions of Ofcom. So it's unworkable. It doesn't work. You know, going for a license to be able to then strap yourself, you know, set yourself in a situation where you cannot move, you cannot say what you need to say, and you're not de-brainwashing nobody, just another station. It's not going to work. So you're going to have to think about now looking at these other areas. Now these other areas, whether we were to do something like, instead of having just voice, we were to have, you know, audio visual, so people can watch and see what's happening. If we were to create that kind of environment, that would allow for people to feel more like as though they could be part of the conversation. It would allow for people to be able to view Galaxy on their phone. It would mean that we can have podcasts that could be downloaded automatically. So when you're out, you can either listen to us or when you're going to bed or when you're in the bath. You don't need to be tied to an FM station. You can download Sister Shanice, jump on a plane and listen to her as you're going across the Atlantic. You could do that if you wanted to. There's no reason why not. These are things that are available to us, and it's time that we start looking at these other options. When I heard the guilty, the guilty judgment coming down from the jury. I wasn't even a little bit fazed by it. Because there are people right now, just one person, one individual right now who are on YouTube, and that one person with, 3 half-hour shows, every strong, has more listenership, more viewership than all of the people on Galaxy who are running 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And it's monetized. So if that's possible, and we are sitting here, focusing on 102.5, we're not serving our community well enough. Our community deserves more. And we have the opportunity to grow and provide more. I think that the fact that already we have the TuneIn app means that management already knows this. They already know this is going on. This isn't me speaking bad of management, because they already know. They know that we have to move forward. If they didn't, there wouldn't be a Galaxy Facebook page. If they didn't, there wouldn't be a Galaxy TuneIn app. In fact, there's like 3 TuneIn stations you could use. So depending on how strong your Wi-Fi is, or your 4G or your 3G is, you can listen to them. So if, for example, you're here in London, or in the UK or in Europe or in America, you've got your 4G, then fine, you can listen to one version. But if you're in deepest, darkest Zimbabwe, Zimbabwe is pretty hooked up. Let's say you're somewhere between Gambia and Senegal, and you're trying to get to listen to TuneIn, and you've only got some poor 3G capability, you too could listen to Galaxy Radio as well. So they're already preparing for this move to a better way of providing content. They know this is happening, and we're already starting to have conversations about being able to, download and podcast these shows, or to be able to create something where, we have a viewership as well as an audio. We've seen during the march, I was asked to be the person to go around and talk to people about the march. I thought it was quite ironic, because those who know me know that I'm not a fan of marching personally. It's not something that I think is the most strategic way of doing things. But I was the one that was tasked with going out and talking to people about the march. So I thought it was quite funny. And if Galaxy Management asks me to do something, then I will do my best at doing whatever it is they ask. So I went out there. And what we found was that I had a thing come up on my phone that said, we've had over 5,000 views of the different videos. So even though there's only 789, I think it was, people who are actually on the Galaxy page, people were sharing it, and so they were getting more views of what was happening on the march. So imagine there's 1,000 people marching, 5,000 people viewing. 5,000 people viewing. We can do something quite extraordinary right now. We're on the precipice of something quite extraordinary, and that's what we want to have a look at. So what I'm going to do, we've been speaking for about 45 minutes. I'm going to end this broadcast here on the Fedbook, and then those of us who are listening on TuneIn, we're going to have a little bit of a musical interlude, and then we'll go back into looking at another area, and it's about relationships. And don't worry, those of you on Facebook, I'm saying right now, I'm sure you're not worried, but those of you on Facebook, hear the next show, because I'll make sure that I restart and bring in another show. So just hold tight for that. So I'll be back again on Facebook in a little while. And for those of us who are on tuning, we have a little bit of music. This is Talib Kweli.